Hello, this is a story, a recording to celebrate Chinese New Year, the Year of the Pig. Long ago, up in the celestial heavens, the gods and goddesses, the divine beings of ancient China, held an enormous banquet, a great festival, and they invited all of the beings of any note or significance who lived up in the celestial realms to come and join this great banquet, the great feast. Everyone who was everyone was there, including the leader or the admiral of the celestial fleet itself, a man by the name of the Martial Canopy. The Marshal sat in this hall. He was a big burly sailor. And like many a big burly sailor before him, he had sizable appetites. He could eat and eat and eat and drink and drink and drink, and when it came to women, he had known hundreds of them in every port in the world. And so there he sat, like all of the other dignitaries at the table, sampling the endless quantity of food that was placed before him. And the other deities and spiritual beings who sat around watched, some in amazement, some in aghast, to see just how much rice and noodles and food of every shape and form and persuasion he could tip down his throat. He just seemed like a bottomless pit. And along with the vast quantities of food that he was consuming, so too went the alcohol. Chalice after chalice, bucket after bucket, he drank and he drank and he drank, barrel after barrel. More than any mortal could possibly take without dying, more than most immortals could take without having the mother of all hangovers. And as the alcohol flowed, so the inhibitions flowed away with it. Whatever social graces the Martial Canopy may once have possessed, they went down with the dregs of the wine. And as I say, he had had a woman in every port. He eyed up the beauties of the court. And alcohol, as we know, has a tendency to magnify beauty and sometimes even create beauty out of thin air when there is none. But the women of the celestial court were exceedingly beautiful, stone cold sober, let alone after a pint or 27. And essentially his inhibitions shriveled, dried, drowned, and he began to chat up the ladies of the court. And at first it was amusing, and then it got coarser and coarser and coarser, and his propositions became more and more graphic. And he went from woman to woman to woman, and eventually he came to the goddess of the moon herself, to Chang'e, who had once been a mortal woman upon earth, treated like a goddess even before she was a goddess by her husband of the time. And ever since she had indeed ascended to the celestial realms and become the goddess of the moon, she was used to being treated with great reverence, great respect, as was her due, and certainly not in the luridly colourful way that this coarse sailor was propositioning her, not just an amorous fancy bit outside wink wink, but positively pornographic in the details of quite what he was propositioning they do together. So horrified was Chang'e that she ran to the august Jade Emperor himself and requested justice be done, that this kind of crass behaviour could not be tolerated in the celestial court. And she told the august Jade Emperor exactly what it was that Martial Canopy had suggested to her. And when the Emperor had gone off and looked up in a few books to find out if it was even remotely possible to do what the sailor had suggested they do, and found out that if you were very flexible, you could just about manage it, he agreed that this was a step beyond acceptability, and that alcohol was simply no defence. This was an act that required some repercussions. And the court was convened, and it was decided that the Martial Canopy would be expelled from the celestial court. He would be cast down to earth. There are some stories that tell us he was condemned to 1,000 lifetimes as a mere human, each lifetime doomed to end in sorrow and heartbreak and grief, that he should learn the importance of love and romance rather than coarse sexual practices. But there is another story that says he fell to earth as a divine spark, as a spirit, and landed not in the womb of some human woman, but in the womb of an old wild boar. And this sow became pregnant with his divine essence, and in due course, after her time came, she gave birth not to a piglet, not to a human, but to a strange fusion of piglet and human, a creature that could stand on two trotters and had hands flexible enough to hold weaponry, and that could talk and think like a mortal man, but had the snout and the bristles and the ears and the tusks of a wild boar. And this creature was known no longer as the martial canopy, but as Zhu Bajie, or as we in the West say, who used to be old enough to watch too many badly dubbed Chinese TV shows, Pigsy. Many were his adventures in the world, as he struggled to contain those appetites that had led to his expulsion from the heavens, his appetites for food and for drink and for lustfully chasing beautiful young women, which had not abated as a result of his reincarnating in this porcine form. As the years rolled on, he wandered the land of China, and one day his eye was taken by a particularly beautiful maiden in a village. And he had decided he would sneak into that village one night and throw her over his shoulder and run off with her for a night of torrid passion in the woods. But when she clapped eyes upon him with the nose and the tusks, she was, as practically any young woman would do, screamed her head off and begged for help, pleaded for mercy. And who should hear in passing but the Monkey King himself? And naturally enough, being a noble monkey, he ran to the aid of this poor young lady with the help of the monk he was looking after and guarding. And between the two of them, they rescued the beautiful young woman, and she was returned to her village. And the Monkey King set about giving this Pigsy creature a damn good thrashing, until the voice of Kuan Yin, bringer of mercy, bringer of compassion, spoke and said, "No, restrain your blows, for this creature must accompany you on your journey into the West, must accompany you as you spread the teachings of the Buddha across the lands of China. Coarse and vulgar though he is now, one day he shall redeem himself, and you must learn to work together." And so from that time forth, Pigsy, Zhu Bajie, learnt to work alongside the Monkey King himself, and the Monkey King in his exchange learned to work alongside this strange man-beast. And they went on to find others, to find Sandy, the fishman, to accompany them upon their journey. But that is another story and the end of this little chapter on the journey to the West. Thank you.